On the Sidelines, Episode 11.
When the game ends and those Friday night lights dim,
that's the cue to turn our attention onto the very players, coaches, and community that makes football in Union County great.
Join Tim Winters as he covers the game from every angle, here on the Sidelines.
Hey, Union County Football Nation, thanks for joining me. This is Tim Winters on the Sidelines with Leland Hammonds. Leland Hammonds is a professor of kinesiology at Northwest Vista College, teaching wellness, nutrition, and exercise classes. Leland is also the owner of Hammond's Personal Training in San Antonio, Texas, and the creator of Kinsanity, a body transformation program. He is a 19-year strength and conditioning coach and was a 3-sport all-state high school athlete. On top of all of those credentials, Leland is a precision nutrition level 1 coach. For those of you that might not be aware, Precision Nutrition is the largest and most respected private nutrition coaching company in the world. Leland Hammonds is passionate and motivated when it comes to educating and training student athletes and the general population. And I was lucky enough to stumble upon a podcast run by Jason Benavides out of San Antonio, Texas, called Octane Athletic Performance. And I heard Leland Hammonds on as a guest. And it verified to me that this was the right person to have on the show to discuss strength, conditioning, and the nutrition of your student athletes. So I am honored and excited to have Leland Hammonds joining me on the Sidelines. Leland, it is a pleasure to have you on the Sidelines. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
You know, Leland, you really come with a lot of credentials to this conversation. Maybe just start off introducing yourself to the audience and let us know how you came about getting into this particular field.
Sure. Well, I should say I'm going to add to the bio, husband and father to Ella and Jackson, some athletes in the making, 8 years old and 6 years old. And so those are probably my favorite things to attach to my bio there. But basically, I've been really passionate about athletics. I learned a lot of life lessons through athletics. All the people that influenced me in my life growing up, I went to a private school here in San Antonio, were my coaches, my teachers, even the PE teachers and the things like that. Those people I was drawn to. And it was something that just became just kind of a part of me. I was really passionate about it. And as I was a high school senior and I had some opportunities to play some college sports and do different things, I was really, really just passionate about learning more about kinesiology, more about exercise science, about how the body works, things with coaching and things like that, and just kind of ran that way. So it was really those big influencers in my life, those coaches and those others that were passionate about sports that really impacted my life.
Well, that's awesome. And, you mentioned the strength and conditioning. Obviously, that is pretty much, I don't know if a lot of parents think about this initially, think about getting their kid involved in a sport. And in this case, we're talking football. But the strength, conditioning, and the nutrition are pretty much the building blocks or the foundation to the athlete's overall performance. Can you talk about what does that entail for the typical student athlete? Is it any different for a middle school player to a high school player?
Not necessarily. Let me backtrack just for a second. I kind of like to use this analogy. I'm sure some people have heard it before, this big rocks analogy, Dr. Stephen Covey. But basically what it is, he brings out this big 1 gallon mason jar. It's got a big open mouth and he brings out certain things. He's got these big rocks and he says, you think all these rocks can fit in the jar? And everybody says, yes. So he takes these big rocks out. He puts them in and the jar looks pretty full and he goes, can I get anything else into this jar? And everybody says, no, you can't. So he reaches under the table and he pulls out these, little pebbles and granite and things. And so he starts pouring it into the jar and shakes the jar and they kind of, weave their way into all the crevices and everything. And so then he goes, can I fit anything else? And, the crowd starts to finally get onto it and says, yeah, maybe so. And he goes, yep, you're right. He pulls out another. He's got sand and he pours the sand in and the sand works through. And he keeps doing this thing all the way till he grabs the water and he pours the water in. And he always asks, oh, well, what's the point? And again, a lot of people use that analogy with leadership and time management, stuff like that. And the big point is you got to put the big rocks in first. And so for an athlete, especially as they're getting into high school, the big rocks is skill practice and team play, or what I should say, game play, meaning whether it's 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 6v6, summer camps and things like that. Skills are the foundation, technique, technical ability, and being able to incorporate those skills into a game situation that's not scripted, that I have to kind of use all the stimulus, the outside stimulus coming at me to be able to then use those skills that I've been working out. So we can't get away from that. Those are the big rocks. So if you want to be an awesome football player or whatever your sport is, that has to be the majority of your focus. Now, when we talk about strength and conditioning and we talk about nutrition, that's basically everything else that's going to give us a competitive advantage. And it's where we hopefully will get an advantage over those opponents, over those kids that we're trying out against, and things like that.
Well, that's very good to define that and make that more clearer. You're exactly right. You can have all the natural ability in the world, but having that strength and conditioning to supplement and complement that just going to make you a more finely tuned machine.
Absolutely. And really, I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, a eighth grade athlete who was going into ninth grade, she's a volleyball player. Her parents had gotten in touch with me through some people, and they wanted her to work with me and everything. And so, she came over. She's already very tall, really gifted athletically, was a skilled volleyball player already. And they were hoping that she's at a really competitive high school. So they wanted her, hoping that she would make like JV, something like that. And so she came and started working out with me. And so in the gym, really, she already had some really good leg strength, lower body strength. She had certain aspects that were already really developed. But one of the things that we could get a competitive advantage from was increasing her, what we call work capacity. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, later. But basically her endurance, her ability to continue to jump high as an outside hitter, to do it over and over again, to work on those things. And with the parents, what I started doing was talking to them about her nutrition. All these other girls are drinking sodas and they're eating chips and they're doing all the things that eighth grade girls do. They're staying up super late. They're doing all these things. And so we talked about getting her in bed on time, getting some good sleep, keeping her stress levels down, working with her nutrition. They were doing the strength and conditioning with me, and then also some supplemental things I was giving them to do at home. And by the end of the summer, we'd worked about 10 or 12 weeks. She went to, it was a week-long tryout. And what happened was these tryouts were lasting 2.5 hours long. And what happened was a lot of the girls who started off strong, the ones that she was competing against, really, their endurance really suffered. As they got more fatigued and as the practice wore on, their skills diminished. They're missing serves. They're missing spikes. They're not able to continue to jump as high as they were, while our girl was just jumping just as fresh and high as she was an hour and a half, 2 hours into the practice as the beginning. She ended up making the varsity and started, and she's been a 3-year starter now ever since then. The other girls she was going up against were also talented. A lot of them were tall. A lot of them had a lot of skills. But the competitive advantage she got was that entire summer, she had been getting her sleep. She had been keeping her stress levels down, and she had been eating properly. On top of the strength and conditioning that we worked on was more of an endurance-based workouts as opposed to just like overall strength and overall conditioning and things like that.
So how important, my next question was going into, is there any core framework for an effective strength and conditioning plan? And you brought up in just that little piece there, you talked about sleep and stress levels. Obviously, that sounds like it's a pretty important piece to the puzzle in the strength and conditioning of an athlete.
Sure. So let's talk about in the gym. Really, when you're young, and this is talking, my 6 and 8 year old work out with me in the gym. I take them in there and we do some body weight things. Very, very simple. They hold planks. They do body weight squats. They hang off of rings that I've got in my gym. And again, just dangling off them. They're not doing pull-ups and things like that. But we're already starting to build a framework even as a 6 and 8 year old. And again, it's all things that they would do at a playground or with their friends anyway. It's a little bit more streamlined here. So when we start talking about like strength training for middle school, junior high, high school, and things like that, you still need balance and you still have to master the basics. The problem is they already want to skip a lot of those steps. They want a power clean and they want a deadlift and They want to barbell bench press incredible numbers, and they want to do what they see everybody else doing. And the problem is they have not built that framework that they need to be able to do those things safely, to keep them from being injured, and to really be able to do the kind of exercises that are going to increase their ability to perform in their given sport and at their given position. And all those things matter. When we talk about balance, let's talk about balance at a joint. A lot of them are going to be doing all the way from junior high up. They're going to be doing lots of squats and lots of lunges and step ups and basically quad based exercises. But what they start to not really focus on is like what we call posterior chain, low back, glutes, hamstrings. And what happens is when you have a big disparity in the strength of your quads versus the strength of your hamstrings, let's say at the next joint, and this time we'll be talking about the knee joint, you're going to experience some pain and you're much more likely to be injured because there's an imbalance at that joint. For my athletes, they're going to do 2 to 3 times as many hips, glute, hamstring exercises as quads to balance that out. Now, that's going to happen at all the different joints. Lots of guys, in particular, football players, press a ton, bench press in particular, but they press a ton, but they don't pull very often. Linemen love to bench press because they can put some pretty big numbers up, but you don't ever see them doing pull-ups, right? Because they're pretty heavy and they can't do pull-ups. So they don't want to do something they suck at. They want to do something that they're really good at, that they can brag on and things. And again, the problem is that starts to create instability and problems at different joints. So we want to do that balance. I'm going to take an athlete and I'm going to have a whole battery of assessments, and I'm going to figure out how's their upper body strength, how's their push to pull ratio, how's their lower body, what's up with their core, all these types of things. And then I can now start to design a program based off of their strengths and their weaknesses and where they need to be balanced up. The human body does some really natural things. They're going to squat, they're going to lunge, they're going to hinge, they're going to push, they're going to pull loaded carries, I like, because that's something that's really functional as well. And those types of things. So that's the framework of the workout, is to figure out, okay, where are we weak? Where are we strong? And how can we provide balance in all of these things?
And that's tailored to an individual athlete per position?
Absolutely. It's per individual and then per position, because you can look across the spectrum of, say, the football positions, and certain positions are going to require more speed and explosiveness. Some are going to require more endurance. Some's going to require more strength. And so I like to use this MMA comparison. In mixed martial arts, you have to know lots of different skills. You have to be able to be a striker. You need to have some jiu-jitsu. You need to have Muay Thai and all these different things. So that's kind of their big rocks, right? They're going to pick all those things out. But strength and conditioning is a big part of the puzzle itself. So when I work with, like, say, an MMA athlete, and this could be even high schoolers going into college or college athletes, I have a certain baseline level of strength I want them to have. So let's just make up a number. Let's say a double body weight deadlift. He's 150 pounds. I want to work his strength up to where he can have a 300-pound deadlift with good form. Once we hit that deadlift, adding more strength to the equation isn't necessarily going to make better performance in the ring. I need to be working anaerobic conditioning. I need to be working this strength endurance and this speed work and this explosiveness, and then going back to skills. So now once I've accomplished this certain level of strength, now I can start to dedicate my time more towards the skills and the things that I need to be successful. And it's the same way with football players or really any sport in general. I need to look and see, okay, what is the power need of that sport? What's the endurance need of that sport? And even in my position, and then tailor the workouts based off of that.
I mean, obviously, I think most folks would realize it sounds like there's a lot of planning involved, a lot of attention paid to each individual, something that I think at a school setting would be very difficult in terms of time constraint, yes, personnel constraints. So how important is it for a student athlete, a football player, at any level in high school, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, to maybe seek a personal trainer or some guidance outside of the school environment?
It's really important. Now, I have to admit that I'm biased because I am somebody that trains and everything and stuff like that. So I better confess to that first, right? And really, if you were even to ask me, I have an athlete here and I could only do one of two things, nutrition or extra strength training, I would actually say nutrition, despite the fact that I am a personal trainer and things like that, because really the nutrition and getting that side squared away is going to have a bigger impact than, say, a few sessions here and there, or maybe an off-season training program. Now, of course, we don't have to select those things by themselves. They can work together, which is going to promote or be the best for the student athlete, and that's what we want. When we seek out somebody, it's really important on the outside to look at the credentials. Now, what most people do is they want to see a certification, which is crazy to me. You can get a certification online. You can get a certification through a couple of days or a weekend certification program. What I'm looking for, and let's take my kids for instance. My daughter's a good soccer player, and she already has foot skills training, and we do different things like that. And if I was seeking a trainer for her, let's say in the off season, the very first thing I would look for is, do they have a degree in an exercise science? Do they have a 4-year degree in an exercise science? Because what that's going to tell me is they're going to have a way better handle and understanding of how the body works, movements of the body, the way the body works in conjunction with each other, so that I'm not going to get my athlete injured, which is the very first and number one priority of a strength and training program, is not to have an injury. Number two then would be to have a progression, a periodization, and to make improvements where I need to improve, particularly in the off season. So if they have a degree and if they have experience, that's going to be a really big thing. Because the big thing with personal trainers is it turns over all the time. If you find a person that's been a personal trainer for even over 5 years, you're going to be talking about someone who knows what they're doing. They have experience. They've seen it all. They've been able to work with lots of different, let's say, athletes or lots of different general population people, and they don't have certain cookie cutter workouts that they would just give to anybody. And that's the big problem. When you go to like a big gym, whichever gym is in your town, and you show up there, you're probably going to get a pretty young personal trainer, one that doesn't have a degree, one that's just, recently got a certification. They're there because they lifted weights in high school and were a good athlete, and they wanted to kind of stay in that gym environment. And what they're going to do is they're going to give you a really cookie cutter workout, one that they would give a soccer mom, one that they would give a older gentleman, and one that they're giving your particular athlete right there. So the big things to be looking for is that degree and that level of experience, a strength and conditioning coach, periodization, someone who has an understanding of how to get your student from A to B. And that's going to take a little bit of time. You're going to have to interview some people, and you're going to have to do your research on that.
And that really underlines the fact, I always tell parents, guardians of student athletes, that when it comes to the recruiting process, being proactive. Don't let, the schools search your kids out, and don't be impressed by all the letters you get or emails that you get from these schools. You really need to educate yourself, educate your child in terms of what you're bringing them into on the recruiting process. And obviously, on this side, the strength and conditioning and nutrition is as important, being very proactive.
Definitely. And one of the problems for the parents a lot of times is they just assume the coach is an expert on these things, right? You assume that the person that's watching your kids in the school, weight room is an expert on these things, which they never are. They're not, the high schools can't afford an actual certified strength and conditioning coach. A lot of times it's an assistant coach from one of the particular sports, and that person, guy or girl, is in there just to kind of supervise to make sure they're not horse playing around, make sure that somebody doesn't get hurt, and the liability aspect of it. But they're not someone who understands periodization and works them there. And what happens is a lot of times, just if the person has the title of personal trainer or the title of coach, there's just this built-in assumption that this person is an expert on all these things. And really, when you dig into it, nothing could be farther from the truth.
All good points. And, I do think a lot of parents think, coach at the school level, but, most of these coaches, at least the head coaches, they're hired as teachers. So they could be a social studies teacher, a math teacher,
sure,
a gym teacher, but a lot of them don't have those certifications. So yeah, it's really important, I think, for the parents to be as proactive as possible, seek out the information, ask a ton of questions, and put your kid in the best position as possible with a strength, conditioning, and nutrition coach.
Absolutely. And there's some things that you could do on your own. And we'll probably get into it a little bit later, but when your athlete works out, let's say, and I don't even have to necessarily have a personal trainer just standing over him, but the goals of the workouts, what an athlete in particular, or even what the mom or the dad or whoever kind of thinks of a workout is really changed. What they think of a workout is kind of like a bodybuilder workout. When we say somebody's going to work out, we think of 3 sets of 10, bicep curls, 90 seconds to 2 minutes off between sets. And we think of these like really, really locked in kind of bro science meets, just my certain understanding of workouts, right? And that's not the way an athlete should work out. That's the way an older bodybuilder who is a competitive or amateur bodybuilder should work out, not how an athlete should work out. So some of the simple things that you can do, even from a standpoint of working out at home, and lots of kids have dumbbells or different things, they're in the garage and they can do a workout, is you want to worry about and you want to think about your work capacity. What work capacity is your ability to do a certain amount of work in a given amount of time. I don't want you to continue to go heavier forever. I want you to be able to do more sets, more reps, harder progressions. Can I get around a lot quicker? Now, I worked with a few high school athletes at this 5A public school here in town. And so the first thing they want to do is they want to brag about their maxes, right? So the first thing I want to do is, ask them, have you front squatted before? Oh, yeah. I have a 275 personal best or whatever. So when they say 275, you can reduce that by about 20% because the form is going to be awful. They're going to get under it and it's going to be sloppy and it's going to be painful. And I'm going to look at it and go, I'm glad that wasn't my son who was taught how to front squat that way. And, you look at it, but even if I say, okay, you can do 275. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put 225 on there and he'll snarl at it and he'll be like, oh, give me a break. And he'll be muttering under his breath. And I'm going to go, okay, but what I want you to do is I want you to hit this 225 front squat. And then I'm going to take you through a quick little circuit and then we'll come back around. And so he'll go, okay. So he does a 225 squat and that's pretty much more close to his max, not 275. So he does a 225, right? He finishes this rep and then I'll have him come over and do a handful of body weight exercises, maybe 10 toe push-ups, something really, really simple. 5 to 10 horizontal rows. And then maybe we'll do some really, really light Romanian deadlifts. So they just go boom, boom, boom. 10 reps of push-ups, 10 reps of rows, and 10 reps of Romanian deadlifts. And I say, okay, well, let's go back and do 225 again on the front squat. There is no way. I've not had one athlete come through the system who's able to then do another 225 front squat by simply because they had to move from that one exercise into a circuit and back to it. They have no strength endurance whatsoever. But what's football? Football is repeated maximal effort. If I'm an offensive lineman, I need to be able to generate that strength and that force over and over and over again over an extended period of time. And it's the same way with all the positions. Obviously, this isn't a one-time thing. This is a repeated effort. And so when they do their workouts and they're working out at home, putting a series of exercises together, saying how many of these things can I do in 15 minutes, and just challenging yourself that way will take you way above what most people are doing in either the school gym setting or in the commercial gym setting.
All excellent points. And one of the things that I mentioned to you in the pre-interview, and I've actually have had conversations with a lot of parents in the area, have been questions that the parents have had. And I've stored a number of these questions over the years and have had a few recent questions come to my attention that I wanted to present to you in different scenarios. And,
Sure.
and one of which would be, can you speak to the increased pressure that student athletes are facing from coaches and or teammates to live in the weight room or to start taking protein supplements to gain muscle weight?
Well, the peer pressure, I'd really even say the peer pressure is probably greater than even the coaches, although the coaches are going to constantly be saying, be in the gym, voluntary workouts, off-season workouts, during the season workouts, like all these things. Yeah, they're definitely going to be, pressuring them into being able to do those kind of things for sure. But it's the peer pressure and it's the numbers game and everybody bragging about their maxes and what can you lift and what can you do without having a real emphasis on pretty much the things that do matter. You're definitely going to be inundated with that. One of the things is, you just have to understand and just say, listen, I don't want to continue to forward this kind of bro science mentality, which is just all these people. It's almost like the blind leading the blind in the weight room. When you're 15 years old, when you're 13 years old, 17 years old, you don't know a lot right now. And of course they think that they do, but someone needs to come in there, and whether it's a parent, whether it's going to be a coach or something like that, and just say, here are the things that matter. And even if that isn't being done by the coaches, the parents can definitely do that. And what needs to happen is the student itself the student athlete needs to just have an understanding of what it is that's required of them. What are these expectations? And then have it be an expectation that's appropriate to the sport, appropriate to the things that they're doing. You're going to always be inundated. And this is going to be something that's a fact of life through college. And, I have peer pressure myself in the way that I teach my classes at college, and other people that work alongside me, and other people that do the different things that they do in personal training and stuff like that. But I just have to say, you know what? I'm going to have an understanding of the principles that need to happen, and I'm going to do it. It's great. I try to tell people all the time. I tell this to my college students. It's great if other college students around you aren't studying, don't have great habits. You have an advantage over them. And if these guys are staying in the gym and only working on their 1-rep maxes and resting 3 to 5 minutes between sets, go ahead and let them. That's your competition right there. And I'm going to do the kinds of things that are going to further me, and I'm going to leapfrog this person on the depth chart because I'm doing it the right way. And all it needs is to have a little bit of motivation and a little bit of belief. And that's kind of where the coaching aspect of it comes in. When I'm working with an athlete, I want to pump them up. I want to coach them. And I want to let them know these are the type of things that are going to give you an advantage. Let those other guys do the other things and the stuff that they believe that they should be doing. And we're going to do the right kind of things that are going to give us an advantage. And when the student athlete buys in, when they take ownership of that, now they're going to be a clean slate, and they're going to be someone that can be able to be kind of coachable, moldable, and work on the things that are really going to help them.
So just to be clear then, Leland, I mean, you're saying basically like these body mass supplements to gain weight. Is this something that you would tell a parent of a student athlete to maybe steer away from? And before answering that, can you also maybe explain the relationship between performance and body weight?
Sure. Okay, first, let's go to that one. And I'm going to use myself as an example because although I'm turning 37 this year, I'm going to still consider myself an athlete or whatever. Don't ask my wife and other people though, but yes, I am still an athlete. So my weight fluctuates because I do things with my class. Sometimes the class will challenge me to gain a particular amount of weight or lose a particular amount of weight. If you go to my Instagram account, I posted a picture a week or two ago. On Easter Sunday, I believe I was 163, and on the last day of the final, I was 145. And I just use these methods that I teach in the college and stuff like that. It's all healthy eating methods, but the difference between how I feel as like let's say a basketball player, and I play some pickup ball and I still play some pretty competitive games and everything. The difference that I feel when I'm 145 or 150 to 165 is a huge difference. I have kind of a sweet spot, 155, 160. I feel powerful. I feel explosive. I'm still strong enough that I don't get pushed around and everything. And I feel like my performance is best. Now I'm cognitive of that. When I'm 145, 150, I might be getting pushed around a little bit. My endurance might even suffer a little bit as well. I'm in calorie deficit to get to those weights and everything, not eating enough calories, and my endurance suffers a little bit. The longer the game goes on, the more my performance is going to suffer. So I've got to be cognizant of all those things. So when you're a football player, whether it's a running back, wide receiver, a defensive back and everything, you're going to have a preferred weight. Now, most people are going to say just get heavier, get heavier, get heavier, build on your frame, build on your frame, build on your frame. In general, yeah, that's probably okay advice, but every single situation should be looked at individually. It depends. It just really depends. And where are you your fastest, your most explosive, depends on what sport you're playing and what position you're playing. But for in general, let's say that we're working with a beanpole, string bean, 9th grader, looks like Screech from Saved by the Bell is an old school reference for you. And we just go, okay, he's got to put on some weight and everything. Well, yeah, he does have to put on some weight. Supplements is exactly that. It should supplement what we're already doing. It does not take the place of not already following healthy eating principles. Even my adult clientele, my adult fat loss training people, the people that train with me to do all the different things that they do. They may want to do a 5K or a Spartan race or do Ninja Warrior or any of these things that I do. I work with the military and law enforcement as well and stuff like that and everything. If they aren't doing the basics, if they don't have their big rocks in the mason jar already, no supplement is going to take the place of it. All it's going to be is going to be a drain on your money, and you're going to be kind of putting your faith into something that's not going to be able to do it. Maybe if you've got everything locked in place, then a little bit of a supplement here and there will be all right. But that's a very long process. I have yet to meet a high school athlete junior high school athlete that has his nutrition locked in place where it needs to be. You mentioned Precision Nutrition. A colleague of mine who works for Precision Nutrition, Brian St. Pierre, he works with the San Antonio Spurs, our local NBA town. And so they were asking him some questions on a podcast. And one of the questions was, tell me all these intricate things that you're doing with a professional athlete. Let us in behind the curtain and everything. And he said, you know what? It's the exact same thing I tell everybody else. Quit eating so much fast food. Stop skipping meals. Drink more water. And you're like, what? A professional athlete has that problem? Absolutely they do. A friend of mine had a media credential a few weeks ago at a Spurs game, and he just poked his head into the opponent's locker room. This was late in the game, right before they came in. And there were about 30 bags of Whataburger, our local hamburger chain, in there. Now, they're a sponsor and everything else. Those are going to get pounded. The second the athletes come in, they're going to annihilate those hamburgers and French fries and things. And what happens is when you're young or when you're a professional athlete like them, as you eat those things, you don't necessarily can perceive a drop in your performance, let's say. And because they're young and because they're expending so many calories, they're not necessarily gaining a lot of weight. They don't show the telltale signs of improper nutrition. And that's the problem with a high schooler. You try to tell a high schooler to eat more fruits and vegetables. He looks in the mirror, he goes, I'm looking awesome, bro. Forget that. I don't need to listen to you. But there's a payday someday train coming on. And every overweight person that you're going to run into and meet had a time when they were younger, when they were fit or they played sports. But what they did was they built a foundation of poor eating habits. And when they quit being an athlete, they quit being a swimmer, they quit playing 2 or 3 sports, now they're burning way fewer calories, but the habits that they had built for so long stay. And they still eat the pizza, and they still eat the hamburgers, and they still eat the fried chicken, and they still drink tons of soda, and they do all those things. And then what happens is they gain 20 pounds in a year, 30 pounds in a year. In a few years like that, they are very, very, very overweight. The problem wasn't all of a sudden now the things that they're eating. The problem was when they were a lot younger. And so whenever I talk to parents and whenever I'm doing that there, I tell them, I don't want to hear the word supplement out of your mouth until we get these big rocks taken care of. And then, that's kind of where we are.
Let's make that transition to the proteins. Pretty much all high school players, they are working out. And I would say, a good percentage of them are probably taking a protein supplement, and
Sure.
Creatine seems to be one of choice now. What are the potential downsides or effects on a high school age athlete taking creatine, and what are the downsides to maybe too much protein?
Okay. Well, let me backtrack real quick. I want to kind of lay out those big rocks. I probably should have done it in the last answer, and then I'll piggyback over to the creatine. When we're talking about nutrition, and this is the definition I give my college classes and everything else, what true nutrition is I provide for my body what it can't provide for itself. Every single day, your body, whether it's the moms and dads listening to this podcast, whether it's the athletes or anyone, you have certain demands and certain things that your body needs every single day. And every time you don't reach that, you're in a state of malnutrition. And those it's 4 principles. Protein, which is your essential amino acids. Protein is number 1. Number 2 is water. Number 3 is vitamins and minerals, basically meaning our fruits and vegetables. And number 4 is our healthy fats. That's the foundation. Those 4 are our big rocks right there. And many, many people, I would dare say 9 out of 10, are going to be deficient somewhere along that spectrum of water intake, protein intake, fruits and vegetables for their vitamins and minerals, and healthy fats. They just don't have a routine, a schedule, or the knowledge to be able to do that. And so my first focus has to be on those things. And especially when you're an athlete, when you're a high schooler, you've got plenty of time to eat fast food and junk food and stuff from the gas station and all of the things. You have a very limited window to be able to compete, have fun, battle with your teammates, ride in the vans and everything else. So why not get the most out of it by getting your nutrition square and on point? And what needs to happen is you got to have a routine to be able to do those kinds of things. So it doesn't take, you don't have to have a degree in nutrition. You don't have to be a registered dietitian. You just have to have an understanding of these basic needs. Now, when you're an athlete, your carbohydrate and protein needs go way up. If I'm just a regular developing teenager or whatever, a rule of thumb is about 2,500 calories, and that could possibly be on the low end of the spectrum as we're talking about everything you need from a developmental standpoint as you're continuing to grow and things like that. when you're an athlete, you're going to be anywhere in the ballpark of 3,000 to 5,000 calories as a calorie need. And that's just to maintain body weight for the most part. And again, we'll talk about football players and guys in general. So as that happens, of course, your protein intake is going to need to go up. Your carbohydrate intake is going to need to go up. You're going to need to stay hydrated, and you're going to need to eat even more fruits and vegetables and everything. So let's transition to creatine. Creatine actually occurs naturally in quite a few different things. Red meat, chicken, fish, and things like that. So if I'm already eating and I'm having protein at every meal and I'm eating the types of things and the whole foods that I need, you're not going to need extra creatine. Okay. Your body produces it. And even if I was in a state of where I wasn't eating those types of proteins, or maybe I'm skipping meals, or I'm just eating out of vending machines and doing the things that high schoolers do, your body can actually produce creatine also through a couple of different processes. But when I start taking extra creatine, and again, most of the time the kids are going to go way over the recommended dosages, right? That's problem number one. Problem number two is these supplements aren't FDA regulated. So unless you really can trust the source with where you're getting that, it's a crapshoot on whether or not this is even a pharmaceutical grade, whether this has just been a lot of filler, a lot of placebo kind of ingredients and things like that. And on top of all that, when I have too much creatine or I go over, it's been shown to add to muscle cramps, muscle tears, lots of different things. Basically anything that is a reduction of performance when I have too much creatine going on, that now becomes more of a possibility. I'm more likely to lose endurance and to have heat cramps and just lots and lots of different things. And so if I was eating properly and I'm eating the right types of things, creatine is going to be way, way, way down the list, if not completely off the list of things that you're going to need. All that is just perpetuated through the bro science that happens in the locker rooms and even with the coaches and stuff like that. Oh, just have another protein shake. Oh, just have more creatine. And I'm not anti-protein shake at all. Whey protein, casein protein, and these things, if from trusted sources, can definitely, again, supplement what you're already doing. And so if my calorie intake and my calorie needs are really, really high, or maybe my mom or my dad works, or I'm from a single parent family and I need some simple, easy ways to do it. Maybe my training is so intense that I don't really want to be digesting whole foods. I have no problem with a protein supplement whatsoever. Again, you need to trust the source and you need to be kind of cognizant of it. The source that I have, I'm looking across my kitchen table right now at the protein that I have. And I talk to many different supplement stores here in San Antonio. I've got one that I trust. I got to know the owner. Where they do and where they manufacture these supplements is an FDA approved laboratory. The ingredient list is very short. Like the ingredient list has like 3 things and none of them have 20 syllables, like all the ones that you find at GNC and Vitamin Shop and your grocery store. You'll never be able to read all those ingredients and everything. So I have a trusted source that I have. And when I need to supplement whatever it is, and maybe I'm having a busier day or more, I worked out a lot more, or my just calorie needs goes up, that is a very easy way to then add protein into an already healthy diet with the big rocks are taken care of.
Well, it's all a tremendous amount of information there, and again, it just underlines the ability for the parent or guardian to really be proactive even when it comes to supplements, not to take the easy road out to go to your local GNC around the corner to pick this stuff up, but to try and search for a trusted source for that supplement that, where you're looking at ingredient lists where you don't have 20 to 30 things that you can't pronounce.
Absolutely. And really to go back to protein one more time, Dr. Peter Lemon does a lot of research in like the protein needs for athletes and stuff like that. And a starting point for him and with his research is 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So you just take, let's say your athlete weighs 200 pounds. This will be an easy way. I just multiply 200 times 0.8, 160. I'm going to need about 160 grams of protein to maintain what we call an anabolic state, meaning I'm not going to be losing weight or breaking down muscle. I'm going to be at least maintaining and recovering muscle, if not building. Now, that's a starting point. That number sounds high, 160 grams, something like that or whatever, but really that's less than 800 total calories. We just said this athlete's going to need 3,000 to 5,000 calories. If they're having a source of protein and there is a protein at each meal, they're eating their breakfast, they're having a good lunch, they're eating something pre or post workout, their dinner, and even having an after dinner, which is a classic of a lot of athletes and everything. Mom makes them a couple sandwiches and stuff like that because they're still starving. They're famished. What's their body telling them? You need more calories and everything. So just to maintain, that's a starting point. If you want to talk about growing new muscle and putting on weight, now we're going to be talking about a gram per pound of body weight and beyond. Again, that's going to take some planning. I definitely need to be eating, but one of the things that's really important to understand is the research also shows us that protein synthesis, which is basically the way that your body, I don't want it to get too technical here, but the way that your body utilizes protein, that nutrient protein, and uses it to recover, build back, and build on to new muscle, normally caps out at about 30 to 40 grams per serving, per time that you eat, per digestion period, if you want to call it that way. So what happens is these kids get these like mass gainers and they're putting 2, 3, 4 scoops, drinking it with all sorts of other, ton of milk, ton of this, ton of that. The shake itself is 2,000 or 3,000 calories, but only 30 to 40 grams, okay? Only 150 to 200 calories of that is actually going to be going towards the building and maintaining and repair of the muscle. And so what is a much better idea is to spread those 30, 40 gram protein servings out throughout your day. So now we're talking about I'm going to have to eat 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. As an athlete, it's the cross you have to bear, athletes. And I go ahead and I do it that way, you're going to be in a lot better position and in an anabolic state to continue to recover from your workouts, recover from your games, and hopefully put on muscle. During the season, you're not going to be gaining a lot of weight anyway, and it's really a crazy idea to think that I'm going to put all this muscle on because of all the stresses of school, all the other things that you have going on top of practice schedule, on top of games. Building muscle and gaining body weight is something that's going to happen post-season, not peri-season, not during the season. So I really want to just concentrate on recovering from the workouts, recovering from the gains, and maintaining what I have, and then having a goal of building on to that once the season's over.
Excellent. And, I think I pretty much know, you discussed it a little bit earlier. I was going to ask you the best diet for a high school athlete playing football, but you talked about the keys, the protein, the water, the vitamins and minerals, and the healthy fat. Those are the core outline for a best diet for a high school athlete?
Absolutely. And then what's going to happen from that? So those are the nutritional needs my body has. Now, on top of that, it's going to have energy needs as well. And that's when we put other carbs. Like when I'm working with a regular person, a Joe Blow, let's talk about mom or dad in the car right now of the athlete. Their energy needs are way lower than the athlete themselves. They live a pretty sedentary life most of the time. They probably have a job where they sit down a lot, and that's pretty sedentary. They don't work out very often. Their workout is getting their athlete from point A to point B to practice, griping at them to get homework done and things like that. The carbs they get from fruits and vegetables is plenty to fuel that day. Okay. But when we're talking about an athlete, they have a much bigger energy need. And so now we can start talking about like starchy carbs and things like that, talking about your brown rice and your bread and your sweet potatoes and like all these types of things. Again, it's not empty calories. Drinking a Monster, eating candy, having a donut, eating, all these kinds of sugary sweets and things like that with trans fats and stuff. There's no nutrition there. Okay. It's nutritionally void and it's just empty calories, meaning all it's providing is a little bit of a boost of energy. And that energy really burns out quickly, which is why you have those big kind of drops. If your high school athlete has a hard time after lunch, staying awake in the next class and they're falling asleep, that's a blood sugar issue as well. They've probably missed a meal or eaten something super sweet, super sugary leading into it. And like, that's not the way that your athletes should be working. They should be alert throughout the day, having a stable blood sugar and everything. So as I'm an athlete, that need's going to go up. So your starchy carb needs are going to go way up as well and everything and stuff. And so that's the real main difference between, say, a high school athlete or an athlete in general and the general population. The general population is feasting on carbs. They're feasting on starchy things, and they're eating tons of bread at Olive Garden, and they're eating all these different kinds of things. They could pretty much fuel an ultra marathoner on the amount of carbs they're eating. And their problem is they live a sedentary life. And that's the reason why they're gaining the weight that they're gaining, or they're unable to lose the weight that they're unable to lose. The athlete, though, we already know they could just eat junk and process junk all the time and still do pretty well. Well, what if we take those fast foods? What if we take all those processed foods, things that are in a bag, things that have tons of ingredients that does not rot? If it's something that doesn't rot, it'll make you rot if you eat it. The color of a nacho or the color of a Dorito doesn't occur naturally in nature, right? It doesn't come up out of the ground with that fluorescent crazy color and smell. It doesn't stain your fingertips. Those types of things, if you continue to consume those type of things, are going to have a negative impact on your performance, and you're building habits that are going to lead to problems down the road. So as an athlete, and this could be football, but it can be soccer and all the other sports, female athletes, the same as male athletes, is you're going to have to cover all those bases, those 4 bases we talked about, your protein, your water, your healthy fats, and your minerals and vitamins with your fruits and vegetables. And then we have the carbs that need to be on top of that, which is kind of like your extra calories that are going to be able to fuel both your performance, your workouts, and in your game.
Well, you are dishing out the hard facts, Leland. I think a lot of folks might be cringing, and they know you're speaking the truth, but it's hard to hear. And it's real important to have and maintain a discipline, especially when you're a student athlete, being pulled and tugged with school and athletic performance and your practices and your Friday night. So it's tough, but you have to be disciplined when maintaining a certain athletic performance lifestyle.
Absolutely. And again, take some ownership of these things. When you start to research these things and you involve the kids, they've had this research where little kids, and we're talking about 3, 4, 5 years old, kindergarten and stuff like that. They do the research where they come in and they show them like the different fruits or vegetables. They can't name anything. They're just guessing. They're like tomato. They're like, no. You're like, potato. No, that's not right. They don't know any of them. Why? Because they're not familiar with it. They've not eaten it. But then they show a picture of like, the logo of McDonald's, and they all know that, right? A picture of Ronald McDonald or any of these things. Well, they all know that. Why? Because they're already been visiting these places over and over and over again. Kids love to eat what they know. Kids love to eat with their fingers. Like, we know all of these types of things. But if you'll teach a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and let them already take ownership, let them be part of food prep, and my son Jackson, who's 6 now, he always stands on a stool, and man, he can name all kinds of crazy things. Why? Because he's always watching mom prepare these different things. When they know the names of them, when they've been eating them since they were little, you develop a taste. Our taste buds are very changeable. You could be drinking 5 sodas a day, and if you commit to not drinking a soda for the next month, and, adding the water, adding the things we're talking about, when you drink that soda in a month, you will have an intense stomach ache. It will taste exactly like syrup and be the grossest thing you've ever poured down your gullet. But when you've been drinking it over and over again, you acquire a taste for it, and you just see a Coca-Cola or even the sign of one, right? And then my mouth starts to water, and I start to have all of these kind of external cues or whatever, and now I want to drink this Coke. And so, this is the kinds of things, whether you have a high school athlete right now, start involving them. Letting them taste things that they've never tasted before. Drag them to the grocery store. Tell them that they can pick something out. Barter with them if you must. Bring them with you to the grocery store. Stay on the outer surface of there. Don't go to the middle of the grocery store where all the junk is at. Stay on the perimeter. Let them pick out some fruit. Let them pick out some vegetables. Let them meet the butcher and talk to him and decide all these different kinds of things, and let them take some ownership of it. And what you'll see is it's going to be a lot easier if they get on board than if we just force them to. I heard this random guy on the podcast, and he says you have to eat this, so eat it. We want you to be a good athlete. Well, he's going to rebel against that right there. Let him take ownership. I only like broccoli. That's the only green vegetable I like. Well, we prepare it lots of different ways. I have it quite often. In any other vegetable, I either juice or I have it in my blender as a smoothie. Now, they don't taste bad because I will not do it. If you give me something and it tastes bad, I'll only drink it this one time or pour it down the sink and never drink it again. I've got to like the taste. It's got to be something like, it's not so bad. I'll do that again. I get the fruits and vegetables, especially the vegetables, by having a juice or a shake every day. And all I'm doing is juicing or blending the kinds of fruits or vegetables that I don't enjoy. If I do enjoy it, then they're just sitting out here. It's available. We go around the perimeter of the grocery store and we don't get the junk. So even if I'm in the mood for junk, I open up the pantry, no junk. I open up the refrigerator, no junk. It's not very hard. And at some point I just go, I'll eat that apple. I'll eat that banana that's sitting there. I'll have it because it's readily available. These are really easy ways to be able to do it. What I'm going to do is, when this podcast posts, the day that it posts, I'll go to my Twitter page and I'll put a few really easy to follow recipes on there. We've got one that we've borrowed from Mike Dolce, who's an MMA guy who works nutrition with them, and it's called a breakfast bowl. Now I've modified it a little bit, but it's really easy. It's a quarter cup of oat bran, it's some chia seeds and hemp seeds, it's some raisins and some berries, a little bit of almond butter, sprinkle in a little bit of cinnamon, put some hot water in it, stir it up. It's delicious. It has more nutrition in that little bowl than most people have throughout their entire day, possibly their entire week, sadly enough. It's not a ton of calories. If I wanted to up the calories, what do? I'm doubling everything. If I've got a high school football player, now it's a full cup of the oat bran. Now it's more raisins and more berries and, all of these things. If you want to add protein to it, sometimes I do, especially if this is pre or post workout, I'll get a half scoop or scoop of protein, mix that in there as well. Tasty. It is delicious. Literally, it takes about a minute to 2 minutes. Anybody can be taught. My son and daughter can do it. Now we have to clean up or they may spill something or break something. They're 6 and 8, but they can do it. I know your high school athlete who acts helpless when they're at home and needing to do chores and stuff like that. I know for a fact that they can do this very easily. It'll taste good. And if they believe this is as something that's going to help my performance, they'll do it. If you had something for me, Tim, and you told me it would help me kick butt on the basketball floor right now as a 37-year-old who's sore after every single time I play, I'll just be like, tell it to me now. And I will just literally like a Walking Dead zombie walker. I will just do whatever you tell me if you convinced me of it. We know through science, through nutrition principles, that eating something like this breakfast bowl, having a super shake, eating these egg scrambles and different things or whatever is going to be a huge impact on your performance, on your health in general, on the way that you even perform at school and everything else. Your relationships, all these things end up improving. But I've got to, be motivated myself and to motivate my athlete to be able to do that. Help them to buy in, have them spend some time with it, have them believe in it. And then, I tell this to my clients and to my students all the time, even my college students. I said, do this for a week, do this for 4 weeks, do this for 6 weeks, and then call me a liar. And they never do. When they do it and they stick with it, these principles are flawless. Now, how you individually implement these are going to be completely up to you. Maybe you like breakfast and you don't like eating late. Maybe the vice versa. Doesn't matter. All I need to do is find these principles, use this template, and then incorporate it in a way that works for my particular life.
Again, a ton of great information. And Leland, we're just going to wrap up here, but one last question. You've talked about a little bit with the pro athlete and throughout our conversation this afternoon, the importance of water and maybe comparing water or sport drinks in terms of replacing fluids, if you could speak to that.
Sure. Here's the big thing about water. Obviously, we're told we need water. Oh, drink water and everything, stuff like that. Carry your gallon of water around or whatever and everything. I don't like that kind of stuff. But what we know about this is the higher the intensity and the higher duration of the activity, whether it's just working out, whether it's your sport practice or your sport game, the more intense and the longer the duration, the more your water needs go up. If you have a 1% body water level drop, you're already going to see a decrease in your aerobic performance, okay? If you have a 3% drop, again, in your body weight, in the water, in your body water weight, you're going to have a reduced muscular endurance. And once we start talking about 4%, which is not a whole lot, it's going to be a few pounds. But again, we're in San Antonio. We play a soccer game. The parents have sweat a few pounds off just sitting there watching the game, let alone the people participating in the sport. A 4% drop in your body weight, your water that's in your body right now, is going to have a reduction in both muscle strength and motor skills. Okay. And so that's really insane to even think about. And, you'll see let's see a pro game. You watch NBA finals coming up and you see the athlete come off the field or the floor and they're handing him water. And sometimes he just waves them off because the coach is talking or he's watching the game or he's yelling right there. He needs to get that water. Someone needs to continue to hand him water over and over and over again, because we know that dehydration and a loss of water leads to a drop in performance. And so a 1 to 2, and I've got one more number here. I didn't want to forget it. A 1 to 2% drop in your body weight. So let's say I weigh 200 pounds. I'm an offensive lineman. It's super hot. I've got all my gear on and everything. I come in and I have now lost 2 to 4 pounds, which is not outrageous at all. Some of the UT linemen lose 15, 20 pounds and a half and have to rehydrate and everything. But let's say I lost 1 to 2% right there. That leads to a decrease, a reduced performance in any kind of physical activity. So it's really, really important that anytime you can, get a water break. Grab some water. They tell the athletes over at UTSA, one of the local colleges here, anytime an athlete walks past their water fountain, they're told, get water. If one of the coaches see you not at least get a drink of water, you're going to run laps. You're going to do this or you're going to do that. And so it's really, really vitally important. This isn't sexy information. This isn't fun, awesome information. But what it is it's going to give you an advantage over the other athletes, over your competitors. Constantly be drinking water prior to your sport or your activity or your practice, during the activity, and then after the activity as well and everything. If you would drink about a gallon of water, and that number is pretty general in everything throughout your day, and this includes the water that you consume peri-workout, peri-activity and everything, you're going to be fine. You're going to take it. Now, this works really good for general population as well and a lot of other stuff, but for athletes in general, it's a big reduction. I don't drink Gatorade or any of these other kind of sports drinks and stuff like that. It's extra calories I don't want. There is a lot of artificial things in that. It's pretty processed. And even, Gatorade and these big companies know that now, right? Because now they're having reduced calorie ones. Reduced, like, if these electrolytes were so important, why are you reducing them and everything? Because they know that the fact that, and I had an athlete, who's a former athlete that wanted to lose some weight. He had gained weight post athletic career. So we were working out and we had his nutrition pretty much on point. And after about 4 weeks, we looked at his weight and it wasn't where I expected it to be. And, and so I started quizzing him about it. We're getting these workouts here. We're doing all these things right. And come to find out, he, on his own accord, was drinking about somewhere between 2 to 4 bottles of like Powerade or Gatorade or something like that a day. He considered it healthy. He considered it something I'm replacing all these kind of things. That ended up being close to 1,500 calories. He was going from calorie deficit to calorie, at least maintenance, if not calorie surplus, which was killing our ability to be able to lose the weight that he had hired me to lose. We cut those out, strictly water. Don't let me catch you with that again. And voila, 4 weeks later, now we see the weight loss that we expected to see in month 1. And so again, with athletes, we do have a lot bigger calorie need, but I want that to be from whole foods and those 4 building blocks, not from these extra filler sugars and artificial sweeteners and stuff that are found in a lot of these commercial sports drinks.
Well, Leland, I can't thank you enough. A ton of great information here, almost 60 minutes worth of, I think, invaluable amounts of information. I want to thank you for all of your time today. And if you could just please, if you want to promote anything that you have coming out and how we can follow you on, you mentioned Twitter, if you give us your Twitter handle and anything else, your Instagram handle, and I'll make sure to put that into the show notes.
Definitely. Social media is where to go. I'm old, Tim, so the website that I'm allegedly working on could be done anywhere between now and about 2045 or so. Major cities and highways are being built in the time it's taken me to do even one page. That's how you know how old I am. But social media I'm really good with and everything. So if you'll follow me on Twitter, it's at Professor Leland. That's all one word, Professor Leland. You'll see me pop up when you put that in there. You can always search the hashtag Kinsanity, which is the letter K with the word insanity, Kinsanity. There's tons of before and after pictures. There's tons of pictures of like meals and things that my college students or my clients are eating and things like that. I also put a lot of workout information. I just posted a private video on Vimeo now that's just a really good workout that any athlete could just jump into and push himself through. It's a metabolic conditioning workout, any of those kind of things. So on Twitter, it's at Professor Leland. On Instagram, it's just my name, Leland Hammonds. When you go there, the only pictures on there are just a smattering of before and afters from clients and from my class. The last 2 semesters, we lost over 600 pounds combined between 2 classes over 2 semesters by using the things that I told you guys about today, those building blocks of nutrition and exercise. And so there's lots of cool before and after. So if that kind of stuff motivates you, go over to Instagram. It's all one word, Leland Hammonds. If you want to get in touch with me also, you can just shoot me an email. Again, my email is lelandhammonds@yahoo.com. So if you've got any questions, that's kind of what I'm all about. My passion is these topics here and helping people. If my daughter says she wants to dance, trust me, Dad can't dance. And I will be lost and I will be like, oh my goodness, what do I even do? And I would rely on someone who had a dance expertise to lead me in the right directions, get me the right dance coach, put me in touch with the right camps and all those kind of things. And I want to be that for you guys when it comes to nutrition and exercise. So thanks for having me, Tim.
Leland, it was a pleasure, and I'm sure you'll get a ton of followers after this podcast publishes. And again, thank you so much for your time and expertise.
Thank you.
I want to thank Leland Hammonds again for joining me here on the Sidelines. And re-listening to this particular episode, I think that student athletes and the parents of student athletes will realize the number of information bombs that Leland was dropping on us throughout that 1-hour podcast. The man has great insight, great expertise in the areas of strength, conditioning, and nutrition, and it's my hope that some of the student athletes listening will take some of that advice, follow the guidelines that Leland drew up during that podcast interview, follow him on Twitter, follow him on Instagram, and just follow his guidelines for building up your body the right way. And one quick reminder to follow me on Twitter at UCNC Football. And of course, for any youth, middle school, and high school football information, camps, combines, anything offered in the county, remember 24/7, 365, UnionCountyFootball.com for all that information.
Thanks for listening to On the Sidelines, the official podcast of UnionCountyFootball.com, the #1 online source for football information in Union County, North Carolina.